Joining us on Scoreline now is Leishman Patrick Harding. Patrick, how are you?
Yeah, good, Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Patrick, before we get into just finding out a bit more about you, the way I copped you, like probably half the world, was Drive. I'm a big Formula One fan. Drive to Survive came up and I heard an accent and I went, he's local. I know that he's not from too far away. You were with Alex Albon, the Formula One driver for Red Bull last year, and it popped out. Just before we get into it, I suppose you've had a bit of reaction, particularly from your Irish from home and everything, from seeing you on the telly.
Absolutely. It's really lovely, actually. I guess you take things like that a little bit for granted because you're in it, and because it's a documentary style, they're just kind of always there. So then when it comes out, the amount of tweets I've got about it's great to hear a voice from home on Formula One and in Drive to Survive, or guys sending me screen grabs of little clips. Then I actually haven't watched it myself, I'm going to be honest, but it's nice to see people's positive reaction to it. Yeah, for sure. I was a little bit hairier at the time, so at least I can maintain my anonymity by virtue of the fact that I have no beard now. So yeah, it's good.
Absolutely. So come here, tell us the story. You're a Leishman. You're not a million miles from Carlow. Whereabouts are you from exactly?
So I'm from a little village outside of Mount Mellick called The Rock. So 10-15 minutes from Portlaoise, about 10 minutes from Mount Mellick. Born and raised, went to The Rock Primary School, went to Ballyfin College. So yeah, but actually I did my first 2 years of postgraduate, education outside of secondary school in Carlow IT. I did applied physiology and health sciences in Carlow before I went and did my physiotherapy degree. So I've got a soft spot for Carlow town.
Absolutely. Sure, isn't it the best of crack? Before we to get into more of the interview, your performance coach, Patrick. So we were talking about Alex Albon. You've been working with Alex and everything as well. So first of all, you have a business.
Yes.
And tell us about your business and what exactly performance coaching is.
Yeah, no problem. So my company is called Cura Performance. As you know, Cura is a Gaelic word that means warrior or champion. So I thought it was a fitting name for the environment that I work in. My first degree was physiotherapy. So I worked as a physiotherapist in elite sport for about 8 or 9 years, and then did a master's in strength and conditioning, just purely because those two professions fit so well together in the professional sporting environment. And subsequently have gone on and done my mental coaching and performance coaching from a mental perspective qualifications. And I guess performance coaching is the encompassing of all of those skills around an individual athlete to help support performance development. So I work now with individuals. My career predominantly was in squad-based sports, but now I work with individual athletes. So I work with Alex Albon. I work with the Irish boxer Michael Conlon. I work with a British boxer, Josh Kelly. I work with an Olympic athlete, Liam Heath, and another Formula 3 driver, a young guy, actually, Ollie Caldwell as well. So now I put processes and programs around individual athletes to help their development and their performance in their sports.
Okay, so we know these athletes, they're superior, they're elite, they're at the top of their game. You get to work with them. So you have to try and get these guys who are, as we perceive, at the top of their game, and you have to push them on even further and bring them to newer heights. Because when you get to the top, everything is fine margins, I presume.
Absolutely. You're talking about 0.5% or percents of performance that make a significant difference. Look, you're a Formula One fan. If you look at qualifying on a Saturday afternoon, you're talking about hundredths of a second between first and fifth. And that's the reality of the margins in Formula One. But very often what you're dealing with people in elite sport is it's actually not, if you're bringing me in to motivate you to be better at your sport, you've already lost. So the people that I work with are so motivated and driven to be successful in their sports. That's what's bringing them, that's what's brought them to the point that they're at right now. I guess my involvement is how do we find those extra little percentages? So there's two aspects to that. One is the physiological and the physical preparation side of things. So that's where the physio, the medical management, and the S&C comes in. But then also, what are the mental performance aspects that we need to tweak here to ensure that your execution of your technical skills means that you're going to be more successful in your performance? And actually, when you get to elite sport in the context of where I'm at right now in my career, what you realize is, specifically in the sports I'm in, once you reach a physical level of fitness, it's really just about your mental execution of those technical capabilities, and that's real. That's where the gold is really, and that's where you start to separate out those guys who are really successful and those guys who just don't really make it.
Okay, and who are you working with at the moment, Patrick? Is it Alex still?
Yeah. So Alex is far from finished. He's a reserve driver this year. Obviously, Red Bull chose to go with Checo this year, but he's still very much heavily involved with the Red Bull team. I think there's going to be a seat there somewhere for him in F1 in 2022, whether that's AlphaTauri. The driver market we know is crazy. So when we get to the summer, we'll know a little bit more. But I think there'll be some interesting moves. And, somebody of Alex's technical ability, somebody of his drive, work ethic, application, his mental resilience is like I said, far from done in Formula One. So I look forward to being back on the grid next year with him.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
we're keeping him ticking over right now. He's doing a lot of work on the sim for Red Bull, and he's doing some DTM racing this year as well. So with the COVID world, and we've seen Hulkenberg jump into the car last year at short notice. Me and Alex made an agreement this year that if an opportunity came up like that for him, he would be ready to go as if he was in a full season of Formula One. So that's what we've committed to, and that's what he's training towards. So we're just as busy. And like I said, I've got some other clients, one in Formula 3 and an Olympic athlete, and obviously Michael Conlon, who's a professional boxer. So yeah, I'm kept busy from Monday to Friday, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Formula One, and last year was just the craziest year that ever has been from the COVID point of view and everything. But following Alex's career, Pierre Gasly was in a similar position a few years before that. Alex got his seat, and it seemed that Alex followed the same fate as Pierre did and ended up losing his seat as well. And Checo, so Red Bull went a bit differently and thought a bit differently, got Checo. Watching Alex, though, I a huge respect for Alex, to be a fan of his as well. A great driver, great overtaker. But I could see from the outside, you were in there, you were on the grid last year. It looked like his confidence was starting to wane towards the end of last year. Just, performances is not. He was up against Max Verstappen as well at the end of the day, and then there's all the pressure around that as well. Yeah. How did you see it from the inside?
Yeah, well, certainly I'll argue that point with you. I guess fundamentally, well, firstly, if you look back at both Alex's and Pierre's, I guess their time at Red Bull, Alex's performances significantly outweighed what Pierre was able to deliver in that Red Bull car. And, even Christian has said last year's Red Bull car was probably one of their trickier cars to drive. And absolutely your benchmark at Red Bull is a generational talent in Max Verstappen. I think we from the outside looking into professional sports like Formula One, we see these rookies come into the sport. Alex got promoted to the top team after 12 races at Toro Rosso. And that comes with a massive opportunity, but also a weight of expectations to deliver on performances. But we have this misconception that experience and time is a linear progression to performance. And that is just not how it works with young, developing professional athletes. They need time to develop and grow and plug those gaps of learning with the experience that they got. Alex is a really self-reflective guy who's very self-aware, and he was developing. I think if you look across the season, sure, he had some inconsistent performances, but that's because he's a second-year rookie. If you look at somebody like Lando, or if you look at George, or you look at even Nick Latifi, were they any more consistent than Alex? I think the difference is Alex is in a Red Bull seat, and with that comes a lot more spotlight. And then there's a narrative within the media around Red Bull chew up young drivers because that's happened in the past. So, I think the context of what happened with Alex last year, for me, it's on the progression of a young driver developing in an incredibly pressurized sport. And actually, what I saw from Alex, certainly in the last 3 or 4 races, was not a guy who was wilting under the pressure of that. I would argue his last 4 race weekends were probably his strongest last year. And then when you take into context the discussions with people talking about his seat and talking about Checo, and Checo having that race win in Bahrain, in Abu Dhabi, the last race of the season, we saw Alex chasing down Lewis Hamilton with 2 or 3 laps to go. And the likelihood is Alex would have got a podium there as well if we'd had 2 or 3 more laps. You take into account those 2 contacts with Hamilton in Brazil last year and the first race of the season this year. Alex could have had 3 podiums in a race win. The reality is he doesn't, and that sport, things happen. Hamilton got penalties for both of those instances. But, for me and Alex, when we sat down at the start of last season, the agreement that we had was that when we got to the end of the season, he could look back and be proud of what he delivered. And actually, at the end of the season, we were out for dinner together in London. It was before the official decision had been made. And that was very much his sentiment. Was he looked back at last season, and obviously there was some technical things that he would have liked to have done differently, but actually overall, how he conducted himself and how he stayed true to his philosophy of racing and how he handled those pressurized moments, he was actually very proud of himself, and he was content that the decision was out of his hands and he had done what he had felt he could do. And that was probably one of the proudest moments I've had working with him. Never mind your podiums, but actually to see and for him to articulate that level of maturity and professionalism at a really young age, having gone through a pretty difficult 12 months in terms of people scrutinizing him as an individual and him as a driver, and to have that same level of self-confidence and self-belief, and like I said, staying true to his philosophy, how he wanted to race, was actually really quite emotional for me. And they're the things that make my job really worthwhile. Not seeing him on the podium, obviously that's nice, but actually my role is helped to develop a young individual, be a better person, and be a more mature, well-rounded individual. He also just happens to be very good at one sport, and that sport is driving a car around the circuit. So yeah, like you said, and that's, these shows like Drive to Survive, that's what they're designed to do, is tell a story. And they're the EastEnders of Formula One, so you got to take what they deliver with a pinch of salt. And I know the Netflix guys really well, and I thought they did the best they could with that storyline. And unfortunately, I did, like I said, I haven't watched it, but yeah, I think Alex did a really good job last year, despite what might be out there in the media.
Absolutely. You've been in that pressure cauldron of Formula One. From the outside, we're told that it's a crazy industry. It's good, it's great, it's cutthroat. You've seen the amount of driver changes last year. The lineups completely changed. You've Vettel and Ferrari, all that story. It's all a bit mad. What's it like being in there, being inside that bubble?
Yeah. It's one of those, because you're in it, that's your normal. So any sport that I've worked in from the outside obviously looks quite glamorous, but on a day-to-day basis, the environment you're in, you adapt to. So being at a race weekend, in your driver's room or in the garage or on track is your normal, because that's your workspace. And, there's a couple of moments where you think to yourself, wow, this is actually pretty cool. But the majority of the time, you're really just focused on the job in hand and, preparing Alex to get into the car, or, helping his recovery post-session, and thinking about what's next on his schedule and making sure he's ready for that, and making sure his nutrition's on point, and making sure that his sleep and all of those logistical things around his performance are in place. You really don't have time to get too much caught up in the surface of it. And especially last year with no fans and no, I guess, marketing and media there, it felt as pure as it could be to just the performance sport that you could get. Red Bull and certainly Formula One is heavily reliant on branding and marketing to bring in significant amount of money to help fund the sport. It's not a cheap sport. So in a normal race year like 2019, the commitments that the drivers actually have from a media and branding and marketing perspective is quite significant. So actually last year, having that taken away gave Alex a lot more focus on the performance side of things, and actually made my job a little bit easier. So yeah, I guess there's times when it can get crazy when there's fans there, but like I said, last year was probably as close to pure performance from a sporting perspective as you could get with as little distractions. But yeah, when you go to a Monaco race weekend and there's fans there, or if you go to Suzuka where the Japanese fans are just so obsessive about their motorsport, you get a real true feel for the intensity of the fellowship that you get from F1 fans. Yeah, it's pretty cool to see, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you a Formula One fan beforehand, Patrick?
When it was on free to air, you'd watch it on it. Yeah, like I'd watch qualifying, or I'd watch the first couple of laps of a race just to see what would happen. But I can't say I was a particular big F1 fan, and that probably helped because there's an element of objectivity that you can bring to it because you're not emotionally invested in the sport itself. I'm certainly an F1 fan in terms of, I guess, an appreciation for the level of technical and physical ability that these guys have to be able to drive those cars to the extent that they do. It's just really, it's awe inspiring actually to see what they can deliver on a week to week basis. Yeah, but yeah, I can't say I was an avid fan. And what I noticed about F1 is obviously it doesn't have the same fanship that football or rugby would have worldwide. But when you meet an F1 fan, they know their sport, and they're setting their alarm for 3 a.m. to get up and watch first practice from Australia. It's that kind of intensity. So yeah, I'm definitely not at that level just yet.
So yeah, you're working with a couple of different clients, as you said. Talk us through some of the other ones. Michael Conlon, Michael of the Olympic boxer, obviously in the news back during Rio Olympics and everything like that as well. You're working with him as well. He's pro now, so he's taken a different. He's onto a different platform now. What's the story with working with Michael? What's that like? Because again, you're moving on to a different sport again.
Absolutely. He's a great lad, really, really good guy to work with. And I've been with him since his second professional fight. And he's 13-0 now. He's got a big year this year. He's got a fight coming up at the end of April against Beluta, who has beaten TJ Dotney, a Leishman, and he's beaten David Oliver Joyce. So that's going to be a tough fight for Michael and in Super Bowl. He's got a big year coming up this year. He's, again, an incredibly talented young man, but combines that with just one of the most focused work ethics that I've ever seen, and a will grow and develop and mature. It's been 4 years. You can kind of take a year out, obviously, with what happened last year with COVID, and he had a relatively significant injury in October last year. It's a few months to get him right again, but yeah, like I said, this is going to be a big year for him. A guy who had a stellar amateur career that had a little bit of controversy, but yeah, he's kind of put that down with that fight with Vladimir Nikitin in December 2019. And yeah, hopefully this year is a start of him collecting those significant belts that I think he's definitely got the technical and the mental capacity to do. Yeah, it's going to be a big year for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've worked a bit with Arsenal as well. You were there for 2 years, was it, Patrick? Yeah,
I was there for the last 2 years of Arsene Wenger's tenure. Yeah. Football crazy as a kid, played Gaelic football and soccer, and football was an itch I wanted to scratch. And after the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, I was looking for a little bit of a change, and I just emailed the physio that I knew at Arsenal, and have you got any positions coming up? I'm free in September. And he said, yeah, come down. Did an interview and started in the October, I think it was. And yeah, 2 years in Premier League. It was incredible club, incredible facilities. It was an interesting time with, Wenger's tenure coming to an end. And, with that comes obviously, a little bit of uncertainty. So, but yeah, it was definitely something from a career perspective that I wanted to fulfill. And I'm very happy that I did it too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what the Rio Olympics as well, they were huge. From an Irish point of view, there's all sorts of stuff going on as well. You were working with
Donovan boys.
Yeah. And you were working with canoers and lads out there as well. So you would have ran into a couple of these boys, I presume, as well. What was the Rio Olympics like?
Yeah. So I was the lead physio for Team GB's canoeing squad for the 2016 cycle. So it was the culmination of 4 years of, I guess, supporting a very special group of athletes, and it culminated in them and British canoeing having their most successful games in history. So they won 2 golds and 2 silver, so it felt like a really fitting end to, the 4 years of work that we put in, and it was incredible to see those people fulfill their lifelong dreams. I guess for me professionally, again, it was something that I had dreamed of doing. You want to go to an Olympics as a physiotherapist, or you want to go to a World Cup, or you want to do something significant, especially if you're in sport. And yeah, very fortunate to have been at Rio and be accredited as as a lead physio for a squad. So a very proud moment for me. But it's one of those where when you reflect on it, it's quite an emotional experience. But at the time, again, it's it's such a pressurized environment that actually you're kind of just a little bit glad that it's over. But actually, a month or two later down the line, when I started watching some of the races again, or I was unpacking my kit, and I had my closing ceremony outfit, and I a couple of the race suits that the guys had signed for me. That's when you kind of think, actually, you know what, that was a really significant moment in my life that I'm never going to forget, and I'm always going to treasure. And actually, very fortunate that I'm going to Tokyo Olympics with Liam again this summer. So, I mean, that will be a very different experience just with the nature of what's happening at the minute. But yeah, really excited to get another Olympics under my belt. It's going to be a busy year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you were saying about Alex and Formula One having no fans. The Olympics will have Japanese fans, I understand,
Yeah,
but no overseas. That's going to be really, really strange. And
yeah,
that's where you come into it as well when it comes to performance coaching and everything else, because they don't have the crowd shouting at them. Well, they don't have their own crowd shouting at them, if you
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean. They're going to have to
yeah,
get they're going to have to hand out Irish flags to Japanese people and
yeah,
put on the Opel jersey and
yeah,
that sort of stuff. Give them a Kerry jersey
absolutely.
and a Carlo jersey as well. Um, yeah, so that's different, and you would be like that'd be sort of taken into consideration as well, I
Yeah,
suppose, going to these.
absolutely. I think obviously with the Tokyo Games, it's the Olympians that maybe this is their only Olympics that I feel sorry for, that they can't have their family and friends there. This is Liam's
Yeah,
third Olympics. So yeah, okay, he's disappointed that his wife and his daughter can't be there and his parents, but actually they've had the opportunity to see him at Rio and see him in London as well. It's like I said, it's those athletes who maybe this is their only games and they won't be able to share that with their family. Now, that won't take away from the pride that they'll feel representing their country, or the pride their family will see or feel seeing them compete in an Olympic Games. And I think, you being an F1 fan, the Japanese supporters are, when they get when they support their sports, they're pretty intense. So I think even with just stadiums full of Japanese fans, there'll be a lot of noise, and they'll take different countries into their hearts, and at least there will be a good atmosphere there. Just like you said, maybe not the individual specific support that we normally get from a games from your home fans, but yeah, it's just, I think a lot of athletes are just grateful that it's going ahead, and there's going to be an Olympics, even though it's a year late.
yeah, absolutely. Any sport after the year or two that we've had is welcome, Patrick.
Yeah.
So you're traveling the world, you're flat out. Do you ever get back to Laois, or what's the story?
Yeah, I try. I love it. I love getting home. Last year was really difficult. It was a year. I got home at Christmas, luckily, for 10 days. But, it was a year from when I was home before to the last Christmas. And, I hadn't been that long away from home since I lived in Australia, which is really surreal, being 45-minute flight away and not being able to get home and see my parents, see my family and my friends. So it's difficult, but yeah, I try and get home at least 3, 4, 5 times a year, when I can, and I'm hoping, if things open up a little bit through the summer, I'll be able to get home again over the next couple of months. Laois is a brilliant place to train. Bring athletes there. You got the Sleep Blue Mountains. You got plenty of open spaces for doing some of our aerobic capacity stuff on bikes, and yeah, it's just nice to bring some of these athletes to a different environment, see something a little bit different. And yeah, you're not going to be bothered cycling a bike around Laois when you're out, you're an F1 driver. So yeah,
Has
I
that
love it.
happened?
It has, and it will again.
All right.
Yeah,
Let me
it's
know when
like I
he's
said.
over. I'll just
That's that.
make sure the loops cross somewhere when I'm out on
Yeah,
my
yeah.
bike.
You mean standing on a crossroads somewhere with your Red Bull kit on.
Yeah.
But no, and I've always wanted to have my own performance center. And there's a strong likelihood that will be in somewhere like Laois. So yeah, the future certainly for me and my family is to hopefully be back in Laois, or at least be back in Ireland. Um, yeah, London's a great city. I've been here 12 years. But being a country boy, the concrete gets to you after a while, and I think
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at in my career right now, I really just need to be near an airport. Alex technically is based in Monaco. you just need to be able to jump on a plane and get to somewhere. So yeah, it'd be nice to be somewhere a little bit more relaxed when I am at home. And I think Laois is a good balance of being close to Dublin Airport, but also being able to see family a lot more and see friends. And yeah,
and the way
back to my roots.
Yeah, exactly, Patrick. And I presume there would be plenty of work in Ireland as well. Even the likes of GAA is getting quite professional.
Yeah,
the way to prepare and everything like that, And
absolutely.
we know the Dublin footballers this morning when we're recording this, were caught training against the bands and everything like that. But they've got a serious setup and staff as well. Like that's the way GAA has gone. Who knows? It might
100%.
take it back this way.
Absolutely. Look, I've got so much respect for GAA hurlers, footballers, camogie players. They live a professional athlete lifestyle while doing a full-time job. The luxury that a lot of athletes have over here, people that I work with, is their sport is their full-time job. So I've got so much respect for the level of commitment and work and investment that the guys and girls in Ireland do just to be able to compete and be able to represent their clubs and their counties, and yeah, like you said, the sports science and the coaching teams around these teams are as professional as you can get as well. And, Dublin have proved if you have the money to invest and you invest that, success can come with that. So yeah, maybe I'll be involved in Laois 7 in a row in the next 10 years. So you laugh there like that's not possible.
Oh no, it is absolutely. Laois should be making serious inroads. There's plenty of work going on, and you can see it as well. And likewise in Carlow, Carlow Kilkenny is our area here. But yeah, no, Laois certainly on the up.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope so. I mean, and to be able to get involved in that or involved in GAA in some way over the next few years would be a really nice way to help transition back to Ireland if that's what happens. And yeah, be able to maybe bring some of my experience and bring some of my skill set to Gaelic football and Gaelic games would be really nice. My dad was a Gaelic football coached the Laois Minors, coached senior football, actually coached the Carlow Minors for a couple of years as well. So yeah, he's been heavily involved in GAA throughout his career. And my brothers are involved in the GAA now, both coaching with their clubs. So there's a very strong affiliation with our family and Gaelic sports. And, it's something I've really missed, either both playing and being involved, with your club, or, the best friends I have in the world are still from the club that I played GAA with from when I was 8-9 years of age, and no matter where you travel in the world, they're the guys who are on your WhatsApp giving you abuse or, reminding you or something, or sending me screenshots of Drive to Survive, and yeah, like I said, it would be nice to be back there at some point and being able to contribute to my community or a community, and maybe in GAA would be really special actually.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, enjoy your travels this year. You're going to Japan anyway, definitely. And following Alex Albon around with DTM. And if he gets a call up, I suppose, in the Red Bulls this year as well, he's and all the other work that you're doing at the moment as well, all over the world, but still Laois man at heart. It's been great talking to you as well. Great spotting a local lad, of course, on Drive to Survive on Netflix. For those not, I suppose, for those not Formula One fans, it's sort of a dramatized version of a look back at last season on Netflix. But if you're into Formula One, you'll enjoy it anyway. Patrick is on the latest series of it, which came out the week before the Bahrain Grand Prix last week, so about nearly 2 weeks ago. The Formula One season got underway, of course, at the weekend in Bahrain, and Red Bull firmly back at the top table as well, which is another thing as well. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton with not even a second over the line. No. That was some battle, wasn't it?
I'm not quite sure how Max didn't manage to win that race, but I mean that's what people want to see. For Max to be nearly 4/10 quicker in qualifying means that car is in a really good place. And I mentioned before, he is a generational talent, and with the right car, he can definitely challenge Mercedes this year. So. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for Formula One fans, that's for sure.
Absolutely. We look forward to it. Patrick, it's been great talking to you, and mind yourself on your travels, and the best of luck with the rest of your career as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, David.
Thanks for talking to us.